These rainbow trout were caught by Denver ice fishing expert Mark Armstrong, who's developed a light tackle ice fishing system which focuses on 3 points. Use 6-pound test line on a rod with a wire strike indicator, which detects the soft hit of wintertime trout. Second, keep your lure at the plankton level. Those tiny organisms are a major food source in winter, and they generally stay around 15 feet below the ice. And third, appeal to the fish's sight and smell.
I use an all-fluorescent jig with a radium head, so I get an all-glow effect under the ice. It pulls them in from a little further away. When they come in to see what the jig is, they realize it's tipped with a corn grub, and that's all the scent they need, and they usually take it. The big ones are the ones that will hit the lightest of all. They just barely nip the wire. Just barely nip the wire, and they've been had.
11 Mile Reservoir is one of the top places for trophy-sized fish. But Lake John, Delaney Buttes, Blue Mesa, and Miramonte can also produce good fish. Whenever you venture out onto lakes, make sure there's at least 4 inches of clear, hard ice. Any thickness less than that creates a potentially dangerous situation. With the Division of Wildlife, Angie Varela, News West.
No matter how many times you go ice fishing, there are always a few things you can never get used to. One's getting up very early in the morning, one's chopping holes in the ice, and the last one is staying out in the bitter cold. But there is always one thing that makes it all worthwhile. It's the kind of fish you can catch when you're out on the ice. Those rainbow trout were caught by Denver ice fishing expert Mark Armstrong, who has developed a light tackle ice fishing system which focuses on 3 points. Use 6-pound test line on a rod with a wire strike indicator, which detects the soft hit of wintertime trout. Second, keep your lure at the plankton level. Those tiny organisms are a major food source in winter, and they generally stay around 15 feet below the ice. And third, appeal to the fish's sight and smell.
I use an all-fluorescent jig with a radium head, so I get an all-glow effect under the ice. It pulls them in from a little further away. When they come in to see what the jig is, they realize it's tipped with a corn grub, and that's all the scent they need, and they usually take it. The big ones are the ones that will hit the lightest of all. They just barely nip the wire. Just barely nip the wire, and they've been had.
11 Mile Reservoir is one of the top places for trophy-sized fish, but Lake John, Delaney Buttes, Blue Mesa, and Miramonte can also produce good fish. Whenever you venture out onto lakes, make sure there's at least 4 inches of clear, hard ice. Any thickness less than that creates a potentially dangerous situation. With the Division of Wildlife, this is Steve Davis, 7 News.
The weather is a little too warm right now for ice fishing, but the fishing was pretty good during the cold snap several weeks ago. Angie Valera Cole says, from the Division of Wildlife, says ice fishermen are hoping the cold weather will return so they can continue their favorite sport.
Ice fishing is truly a different kind of sport. At its very best, ice fishing can furnish some of the best action of the year. At its worst, ice fishing offers nothing more than hours of shivering boredom. Mark Armstrong is almost strictly a wintertime angler. He says ice fishing is easy if you know what you're doing. Armstrong uses an ultralight setup. Its most important part is a wire strike indicator.
Usually when the wire goes down, you definitely want to set your strike immediately. If you don't do that, you've lost your fish. They're not playing with the jig, they've always got it in their mouth. And the minute you wait and don't set your strike, you've lost your fish.
Armstrong also says that too many people use salmon eggs and worms, which are an unnatural bait in the winter.
Well, I definitely recommend jigs. Start using flea flies or small homemade jigs and tip them with wax worms or corn grubs. And using wires and light poles and short poles so you can approach the hole when you catch your fish would be your best bet.
Some of Colorado's better ice fishing spots include Antero and 11 Mile in South Park, Lake Avery near Meeker, Blue Mesa below Gunnison, and the North Park Lakes. One last item, always be aware of thin ice no matter where you fish. It takes at least 2 inches to support a single person and 3 inches for a small group. If ice fishing hasn't exactly been high on your list of priorities, this year's early freeze is offering you a good opportunity to try it. With the Division of Wildlife, Angie Varela Cole, 9 News.
Snowmobiles to get around in the wintertime, but a Denver man says mush to all that. Mark Armstrong is an avid outdoorsman who says there's a big advantage to getting around the old-fashioned way. Tonight, photographer Ron Boyd introduces us to Mark and his 3 travel companions, Snow, Samson, and Goliath.
Good dog? These dogs, is what they do is they give me more enjoyment by taking me out onto a lake. In the wintertime, it brings Colorado back like it was 20, 30 years ago when I started hiking with my dad. Samson, up. Kids, sit on the sled. I started looking back at what our forefathers did here in Colorado, and that was mushing. So I decided dogs are a lot easier to love than snowmobiles, and they start each and every time, where a snowmobile just won't do that. Mush! Let's go! Yeah! So the kids really love it, and especially around Christmas time, we try to mush the kids in the neighborhood too. And it's real special. You get a little sleigh music going, and I think it beats the horse scene. So this is the dog's nature, and they really love to work and do this kind of outdoor stuff, as opposed to keeping them contained in a yard or even keeping them contained to a leash at a slow walking pace. They like to get out and really work their muscles. So what you need is a good path and someplace for them to guide to, and you just cut them loose and let them go. It's mostly heritative with this dog. Yeah, boy. You want to give them as much love as you give your kids, and they'll turn around and love you right back and mush for you tremendously well.
So next time you're in Wash Park, look for Mark Armstrong.
The Colorado Division of Wildlife tonight is investigating the mysterious death of a family pet in Denver's Washington Park area. Investigators say they may never know what killed the dog, but one of the possibilities they're looking into is that the dog ate a bird that may have been poisoned by the chemical Avitrol. As Channel 2's Ann Lindstrom reports tonight, the case points to the many dangers our pets face from poisoning, especially during the summertime.
Let's go! Yeah!
On snowy winter days, Mark Armstrong and his pet Malamutes were a familiar sight in Washington Park, where Samson and Snow would savor the cold weather and get the exercise for which they were bred, pulling a sled. So it was like losing a family member when the dog on the right, Snow, was apparently poisoned this weekend.
She just screamed in pure agony and then convulsed and then screamed again. And this went on until we got her to the vets.
The vet says the dog could have been poisoned by the chemical Avitrol. It's a restricted pesticide used to control birds. Experts suspect Avitrol in the death of several birds in Adams County this winter. Armstrong says he found 5 dead birds in his yard last week. His dog Snow found one too, and she ate the bird before Armstrong could stop her. Investigators with the Division of Wildlife say it may be impossible to tell if Avitrol killed Snow, but they say it is a possibility.
If it is a secondary poisoning, it's going to be pretty tough to determine exactly what it is. And it could be anything. I say Avitrol because that's what he told me he thought it might be. It could be antifreeze. The dog may have gotten some antifreeze. And it's real hard to say at this point in time.
There are a number of different kinds of insecticides and pesticides that people use on their lawns and gardens this time of year, and most of them can hurt your pets.
With all the insecticides that we're using nowadays and all the poisons, you never feel, this never touches home because it's always out in the prairie lands. You hear about our eagles and about our coyotes being poisoned. But when it comes home in your own backyard, then you really are made aware that we're making a mess in our own beds here.
Armstrong plans to file a complaint with the EPA and the State Agriculture Department in an effort to find out if someone used Avitrol improperly. He knows it won't bring back his dog, but it could save the life of someone else's pet. Ann Lindstrom, Channel 2 News.
By the way, if used correctly, Avitrol is supposed to just frighten birds away. And in Denver says a local store is selling imitations of his product without telling the customers they're not the real thing. Paula Woodward is here to tell us his story. These are fish lures we're talking about.
Yes, they are. They're called ice fire jigs. You can see this one here. They're used for ice fishing. They can be used in, or you can find them in tackle shops. Mark Armstrong's specialty jigs have been featured on fishing shows and in newspaper articles. Mark says one of the larger stores in town is taking advantage of that publicity.
Back that up to the attorney.
Some bright-colored paint for the head, a dot for each eye, strong thread bound tightly around the body, a rooster hackle for the tail. Each of these jigs is made by Mark in a back room of his home.
But in all the years that I fished in this state, and that's been 40 years now,
I've never seen anything in the water that even resembles these little things. It even comes close.
Mark's jigs sell for about $1.50 a piece. It takes a lot of jigs and a lot of hours to make ends meet.
We're on food stamps right now, and we're trying to make ends meet. And this is the only way that I can provide for my family at this time.
It's this store Mark says is selling duplicates without telling customers they aren't Mark's Ice Fire jigs. We run a check. The store clerk tells us about all types of jigs. We ask specifically about Ice Fire jigs. Mark listens to the conversation, which we recorded on tape in the store.
Ice Fire jigs.
That's for 11.
That's for 11.
This is the big trout. We use, it's very similar in jig, bigger hook, bigger trout, bigger jig.
Now, what brand is that?
Ice Fire type jig.
But when we press him, the store clerk backs off.
What, Mark Armstrong's?
Armstrong used to tie all of our jigs for us, but his quality got real poor. He was using very poor materials, and they came out very poor looking. But I can't tell you they're Ice Fire jigs, but there's no difference between this jig and an Ice Fire jig.
Well, that's a bunch of garbage. I've never heard anything as bizarre in my life.
To him, Mark says the difference between what we bought and an authentic Ice Fire jig is obvious. The body on the fake is furrier and the tail has crystal flash for accent. Mark says the flash distracts the fish, so he prefers not to use it.
And then on all my jig heads, I always try to give them the look of a little bug. So as what we do is we'll put luminous paint on all of our jigs. And we dot the eye with a little finish dot. It's an extra little added plus, but it makes them look neat. It makes them look cute.
It may just be fishing tackle, but to Mark, it's a successful product of his own creation.
I know for myself what I do here and the work that I do is excellent, and I feel real good about that. We work hard at it. It's our only income.
We talked with a shop manager. He told us if someone comes into the store asking for Ice Fire jigs, he tells them he doesn't carry them, but he does have something similar.
Is there anything illegal in this? Were you able to determine? Is there any infringement, product infringement?
I'll tell you what, no one's going to know that until they go to court, and Mark says he can't afford an attorney. And we did talk to another attorney who says he might be able to get somebody to accept it on a contingency fee. I hope he does, and then he'll find out whether or not it's legal or not. And if so, he can get some money out of it, if he deserves it.
I wonder if the fish are actually able to swim up to this thing and say, oh yeah, that's a nice fire jig. Let's go for that one.
You take him out and test him, okay?
Okay, sure.
I do think they swim up and say, that's cute. I'll eat that.